Okay, all right. People are saying it's better now. So let's just kick off. So I run a business with Marit, a business called the Being Human Group. Our name tends to give it away. We like to work with people. We're our Gallup certified strength coaches, and we work from a strength-based point of view. Our topic today really, I think, is quite timely. Our job really is to share some of the latest Gallup strength research around how do we work with remote teams. We know that we've been in virtual lockdown now for about a week or so, and people are starting to get to grips with the idea about what it's like to work from home as an employee. And then perhaps today we're going to talk a lot about what it's like to manage a remote or virtual teams. So the Being Human Group is a Gallup licensed training partner. Our credentials are up on the screen. You can see that we seek to empower people, positively disrupt workplaces, and change the way people lead by using the science of strengths. And to this end, we're able to certify Gallup strength coaches, and our team is now more than 40 wide across 12 African countries. By way of introduction, the handsome gentleman on the left-hand side of your picture is myself, Yendor Felgate. For what's important in terms of this webcast is my top 5 strengths. So you'll see that I'll be facilitating the webcast using my achiever, which is not success, I'm afraid, but it is about execution, so we will get this thing done. Deliberative, I always have a structure and plan in place, and given the times that we face, having a plan B seems like a really good idea. Strategic is about optionality, and I'll try and bring some alternatives and some stories to bring to life some of the recommendations and tactics you may want to think about as a manager during this time of working virtually. Learner is what it says on the box. It's all about curiosity. And then, of course, ideation, which is about ideas and bringing further alternatives to the party. Brigitte in the background, and she's looking at helping us with some of the tech stuff and with the PowerPoint slide presentation. So she is not going to check in with us, but if she could speak, she would say that her individualization, the uniqueness factor, and the insight into others is really very valuable. I highlight this is because it's one of the themes that will come out quite strongly when working with virtual teams, is to really understand that one size does not fit all. Then she has belief. So if you ever work with her and she goes blood red in the face, you'll know that you're verging on telling a lie or presenting something that may border on the boundaries of telling the truth. So that's a good indication of when you know when you're on that cusp. She often reflects that back to me. And then connectedness it's about really what it says on the box about connecting all the dots and to make sure that she has context and background and helps then in terms of a way forward when we work with others. So she's going to bring that to the party and give an input in terms of the presentation slide pack. So we're really in sort of social distancing for the first time. And as Time Magazine, I think, really eloquently put it, it's the world's largest work from home experiment. So nobody, I think, can pretend to have all the answers. And so if you have great questions or you're struggling with some of the things around working from home, I think it plays to what we all are grappling with. So on the one hand, if you're a team leader, you're experiencing this disruption and change in your personal capacity, and that impacts or filters the way that you see things. You now no longer have line of sight with your team. They're sitting at home. They are trying to connect. They are frustrated. They try to get to grips with being an employee and being at home. And for the last week, I think people can really resonate with that. Suddenly, you now have to be very polite to your in-laws, stroke dogs, stroke kids, stroke spouses, stroke partners, etc. And sometimes those things can heat up. So there's all this type of emotion and anxiety happening at the same time. The further conundrum is that there's no clear path going forward. So as you can see, one of the unsettling factors that people struggle with is this notion that business has to pivot. There are changes happening. Leaders are grappling with this every minute of the day, and every single day seems to bring new dilemmas, new disruptions, new considerations, and everybody's trying to get their heads around whether it's going to be the high road. In other words, we're only in lockdown for a certain period, or the middle road where we have an extension, or the low road where our economy totally over or underperforms in a way that makes life very difficult. Shlami is asking what Makrit's top number 5 strength is. And her top 5 strength, and thank you, Shlami, I'd forgotten, is maximizer, which is the yellow one on your domain card if you have it in front of you. And that's the one that goes from good to excellent. And so part of the reason why we have a great slide pack today is because overnight she was working hard on it. So thanks for that effort. Elise, good to see you from Frankfurt in the Free State. The second thing is really the factor around the move to virtual is that we've lost the community of the workplace, even in open space forums, even where people have perhaps individuals in their own offices, that community where you could literally walk out and speak to somebody is gone. And so we've given up that community perhaps from working from home where there aren't those disruptions. And so I think a lot of people have found working from home means that you work intensely for long periods of time, and you sometimes forget to do the basics, like have a cup of coffee, take a breath, and just change your mind. Whereas in the workplace, it's a lot more fluid, a lot more engaging. And some people who have strengths in the influencing and relationship domains are feeling quite lonely, quite isolated now. Perhaps others like myself who are much more on the strategic thinking and on the execution side, our frustration is perhaps not being at home. Our frustration is that we're not seeing results of all the stuff that we're doing. And so that these things tend to build up. A great quote really from one of the world's leading chefs wrote, without empathy, nothing works. And so from a management point of view, we've got to really turn up that volume on the empathy, the compassion mode, more than we've ever done before. Task-based or execution-based tactics at this stage are not going to help you to connect, to build trust, to make sure that those communication lines are open, and to make sure that your guys are spot on. And the last thing, and it's the Winston Churchill comment really, is never waste a good crisis. And we'll talk a little bit about what opportunities do exist in the current challenges that we face. I think it's all a little bit about how do we reframe the current environment or express it differently in a way that we can start to work with virtual teams or teams that work from home in different ways to get maximum outcome from it. It's not just about connecting and commiserating. There is an opportunity to make virtual teams work, and during this period of disruption, actually make them quite productive. And we'll share some approaches and tactics in terms of how to do that. So there's an opportunity. The Gallup research indicates that well-managed virtual teams are up to an incredible 40% more productive. However, this requires that we learn new ways of working and new skills in terms of leading and managing such teams. I'm just going to pause there for a little bit. Virtual teams, the research indicates, up to 40% more productive. I can see that with working with Makrit and myself this week quite intensively, is you can get a whole lot of things done when you're focused, when you're intentional, and you can actually deliver more work than the business or perhaps your clients can consume because you have this intense focus and there are very few interruptions. But there are new things and new ideas or things that you have to try in order to make this successful. So COVID-19 has my team working remotely. What are some of the things that Gallup would suggest that we have a look at? There are 3 main themes. One is individualization, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that, so I'm going to park that. But essentially, it's really about what do each one of my team members need right now. And my needs as an individual will be individual to me. So it's really going to test your understanding of the individuals that work for you in a very intimate way around this thinking about what they need from you. It's not about what you need from them, which is a traditional management approach, which you set activities and goals and you let them get on with it. This is a little bit about saying, what do you need from me, the environment, to be more successful or to be engaged? It requires managers to have immense amount of leadership support. And this is about trying to set as clear goals and expectations as possible. So for those leaders on the line that are listening to this, you really should be rallying your management group and starting to think a little bit about what do they need in order to be able to individualize great approaches that will get the maximum from the teams that are working from home. So leaders, the types of things that you should be thinking about from a strategic point of view is what type of future hope or goal can you set now that will keep the doors open? So the first thing is, what work absolutely needs to be done now? What I don't think you can do is expect people to have a normal workday from home and still be productive. There is an incredible opportunity to play stop, start, go. What should you stop be doing right now that's maybe a priority in 2 weeks ago, but may not be a priority now? So stop loading people with things that are unnecessary. What should you be doing more of? Stop, start, and go. So go is what you should be doing more of, and then start are what are some of the new things that you need to bring on board. My sense is there's probably only 3 priorities here. What do your customers require? What do your employees require? And what are those governance things that need to be put in place to make sure that you operate effectively? If you are in the middle of an organizational change and all that other good stuff, you may want to think about how to push the pause button on it. The third consideration for all leaders and managers is the future. And here is really sort of a high road, low road type of scenario. If we all come back to work after the 16th of April, what is that going to look like? The joke that I hear amongst some of my HR colleagues is the following, is that we've unexpectedly told people that they can work from home. What happens when the lockdown ceases and they don't come back? I don't mean that they're given up employment. It's just that they want to continue to work from home because, hey, it's flexible, it's pretty cool, and they seem to be quite productive, some of them. So there's something to be thinking a little bit about. Yes, we're in transition disruption phase, but what happens if that ends? The second question really about the future is what happens if we get an extension? And this is probably my biggest worry because I think we can maintain some type of equilibrium for 2 weeks. But what happens if it's 4 weeks? What type of demands would it put on our managers and leaders, and especially our businesses, everything from engagement through to cash flow and to clients? So there's something that I think is important now to give hope for the future. And the hope, I think, is the business will be there at the end of the day. It may be in different forms, but it will be there. Secondly, the person is valuable and they're contributing, even though we may not be able to see them. And thirdly, you're engaging with them in a way that makes them feel needed, that their needs are addressed, and that you are starting to work and recognize them as a human being. So to pick up the highlight really around individualization, we really want to look at the 6 things on your slides. The first one is we need to engage with our teams. Now, this is an incredibly obvious point to be made, but I have coached people this week where the team leader has not reached out to those individuals in any way whatsoever. They've just left them in isolation. Now, this is an incredible thing to think about. Why would you do something like that? Other people have had tons of team meetings that try to bring people into a community around internet connections and teams. These are all good things. What we highly recommend is that you phone somebody or you WhatsApp call them or whatever, and work with them just as an individual in terms of how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and how you can connect to make sure that you're an important part of that. And so that conversation, we think, should be a strength-based conversation. It should be, it's based on your understanding. And yes, guys, even if you're incredibly task-focused, the things to ask about is, are you safe? How are you experiencing lockdown? What's happening with your family? Because the reality around this is that if your family is uncomfortable and you don't know what's going to happen in that space, you're not going to be productive. Now, you may not, as a manager, be able to do anything about that, but it just recognizing that it is on your agenda. It also helps you to set expectations, because if somebody has a very disruptive home environment or their connectivity is not correct, you're not going to get as much productivity out of them as you would normally expect. And you've got to adjust these types of expectations. The second component, guys, is to really look at each job and each role that is now virtually or work from home, and to rethink a little bit at the job description and the workflows. The reality is you're not going to get the same level of work from the individual at the office vis-a-vis at home, because home is different. You only have access to certain things. You may not have all the collateral there. You may not have access to documentation. And certainly you would not have access to your partner or somebody sitting next to you. So it's really about how do we simplify the workflows down to a level that is easily translatable in terms of virtuality, the person on the other end in terms of their capability, and then, of course, what the technology can allow you to do. There is really no point in asking somebody to do something in a sophisticated Excel environment if their connectivity means they can't upload and send it through to you. The third thing, guys, and I say guys deliberately, so men, we're going to have to engage around emotions. Yeah. So how are people feeling at the moment? Some people are feeling incredibly constrained because their extended family is far away from them. They don't know the exposure of elderly parents. They may have money worries because, many of their family members are not employed or may be at risk of losing their jobs. You may be at risk of losing your job. So all these emotions and anxieties are coming through. Even if you don't have those anxieties, what your strength profile will tell you is a little bit about why you are about to get frustrated. So for those, again, as I mentioned, that have influencing and relationship strengths, they will get frustrated because they don't have those needs in terms of contact. For those like myself who have execution and strategic thinking, we're getting frustrated because we're not seeing great results. We're doing lots of stuff, but we're not being able to get things completed. Things are out of our control. That could lead to immense amount of frustration. And then we also are learning the emotions of the fact that we're working from home. Not everybody is technologically orientated. So we're all learning about how to connect using different platforms and so forth. And I had a very difficult conversation with my internet provider yesterday. And I was reminded by my wife, who was sitting next to me, that at the end of the day, it wasn't that person's fault. And I think sometimes what emotions do, it robs us of perspective, And I think that's an important thing, a role the manager or leader can play at this. Then about expectations, I always tell managers, even in the office, is that people can't read your mind. So if you are not sharing your expectations and your goals and all that other good stuff, they can't see it. This is exacerbated when you work from home because you really can't see that person and you can't read their minds. So I always say to line managers at this stage is think about 2 or 3 things are absolutely mission critical for that person. And then start to think a little bit about sharing that with the individual in a way that they can understand. So this could be time consuming. It could require iteration. It could require a lot of connection, but it's worthwhile, I think, getting that right. People can't read your mind. Then it's a little bit about how you are going to react to the way people engage with you. So do you react or do you respond? When we think about responding, that means about how do I understand what the person is trying to do? How do I encourage? How do I support? When I react, I then play all my all the basements of my strengths, and what comes across is things like micromanagement. Or the person has spent 2 days putting an Excel spreadsheet together, they send it through, they're very proud of it. You look at it and you go, but hold on, X, Y, and Z wrong. And you respond immediately and say, hold on, that's not good enough. So in the days of working from home, it's really about heightened awareness of what you're talking or saying to people, how you're saying to it, and whether you're remaining in that empathetic, reassuring mode, or are you sending this direct signal that nothing's ever good enough and, try and try again. Remember, that person may have no support at home, and who do they seek help from, if not from you. So the ability to react, I think, in an appropriate way becomes mission critical. And then communication. You cannot do enough of it. I put a little bit of a cross against email. Of course, you should be using some email, but it doesn't take the place of one-to-one conversations, much like I'm doing with you guys, I think. Because I think email can be misread. It can be, misunderstood totally. It could come across as not meeting the person's needs at all. The key thing is to make the person feel included, that the real world is going on. They are part of that. And importantly, you're recognizing the value of their contribution. Not everything is going to go right, but when you do see a great contribution or a great attitude or a great reach out in terms of support by somebody, then recognition around that and in communication that is more personal, I think becomes important. So those were the elements that we think that line managers should really be concentrating on at this stage. Guys, I've warbled on long enough, so please make sure that you keep your questions coming in your chat box. I'm sure that you have questions by now. We are going to give you time at the end to ask them, but please feel free to post them as we go along. So what do employees need most now from you? There are really 4 elements that Gallup research indicates that is mission critical. One is trust. Are you building on the trust? Are you maintaining trust? Can people trust you to look out for their best interests? Compassion. I think this one I would almost put as a capital C. Until you've worked or been that person at their workstation at home, it's difficult to really understand what they're going through unless you have your compassion button on. Stability. We're in a hugely disruptive environment where people are worried about whether they can buy enough baked beans and toilet paper. The more stability that you can give, the better. In other words, the key messages: the business is open. We are still keen on our clients. This is what I need you to do. This is how I need you to do it. And then hope. I think that even as managers in our own personal capacities, there'll be times that we feel despondent or depressed and have our own anxieties. But what the role of management is really to take the lead here and always to offer hope. And I think, if nothing else, it's a little bit about saying we will get through this. It's not the end of the world. South Africa has caught this early. And I think if we're clever about how we exit it, we can pick up with our clients and our businesses going forward. So that question of hope, I think, is mission critical. Without it, I think it's very difficult to maintain momentum and energy. Understanding that some people, for example, when they get out of bed in the morning and they don't have an office to go to, sometimes feel that they're disconnected and that they are not valuable. And that's our job, is to make people go, get out of bed in the morning, we need you online, we need you to do X, Y, and Z. Please continue to add value. We recognize that. So what do we mean by trust? So it's a little bit about how can you focus on the individual. In other words, it puts pressure on managers now to understand their people in an in-depth human way than never before. Stability. How can you free me from unnecessary stress? So if we don't need to do 17 compliance reports, but only 1 right now, let's do the 1. Hope. Help me to see my importance. Is it really important that I get out of bed every morning and I log on and do what I need to do? Yeah, I reflect. I had a really interesting conversation with a very prominent HR director who was asking me about whether the business should pay for internet connectivity for their administration staff. And my question back to her was, do you need the administration people to do stuff whilst on lockdown? And she said, absolutely. Is it important what they do? She goes, yes. And she gave me several reasons. And I said, if we look at that, vis-a-vis the cost of an internet connection, what is the real question here? And I think that perspective, a light bulb moment went on. Again, it may seem very common sense stuff, but it's about helping people see their importance. And then compassion, know me. What is it about me that you can recognize? What is it about me that you know that you can connect with? How can you have a conversation that meets my needs? Right. So here's the exercise that we want to share with you as a way of doing some of these things in a practical sense. What I'd like you to do is look at the 4 quadrants and do the exercise for yourself. And I'd like you to then give us some feedback, if you can, on the chat option. The 4 areas that you could do for yourself, and of course you can apply this to your team as well, is called the best of us. So top left-hand quadrant, write down what you think are the criteria for when you get the best of me. So think of yourself as a manager or as a part of a team member. You get the best of me when? What is those criteria and situations? Top right-hand corner, you get the worst of me when? These are really my hot buttons. And I tell you, if you want to make life difficult, these are the things that you can do to me, and that will make me very unproductive. You can count on me to do what? And this is what I need from you. So I'm just going to pause there, and I'm just going to throw it out. Can anybody share an example of a time when you can get the best of me? Let's do the best of me first. Any examples or anybody like to share? Okay, we have some very shy people in our chat boxes. Come on, guys. Let's contribute. So I'll share a little bit from myself personally. You get the best of me when there's a structure and there is a plan. So I love plans. That would be my achiever and my deliberative. Bev is saying you get the best of me when she is connected to others. Bev, perhaps just give us a bit of a sense. How are you connecting with others during lockdown? Get me. Going right. Robbie is saying when there's a challenge and I have the freedom to solve it. Yeah, I get that. Darby, just bear with us. We had a bit of an internet connection hiccup. Should be back now. You should be able to hear me. I'm not on pause, Bev. The internet gave us a bit of a hiccup. Omalola is saying clarity of purpose with minimal distractions. I think that's great. Minimal distractions, so working from home, I think should be good. Guys, I think you get the picture about you get the best of me. Now, if you're a manager and you do this exercise with the individuals in your team, I think the obvious point to be made is, you can start to see what activities and workflows would really work for that person, and they'll be able to contribute greatly. Tom was saying, when I have direction and context. So let's reverse it now. If that's how to get the best of the individuals that contributed, and thank you for that. You get the worst of me when? This is always the fun one, isn't it? You get the worst of me when you tackle me with tough projects before 10 o'clock in the morning, before I've had my third cup of coffee. Could be one way of answering that. Guys, you get the worst of me when? I'm going to ask Mahrit to say, get the worst of you when? I think I know the answer. You get the worst of Mahrit when you give her a presentation an hour before a webcast to have a look at. She's laughing. Anybody else, guys? When you get the worst of me? He's saying, when I'm asked to make changes to projects on very short timelines. Bev, apologies, I did not mean to cut you off. It was technology rather than conversation. That was not the intent. Please keep contributing. Right, usually people have great stories around you get the worst of me. All right, you can count on me. I love this one because this is a little bit about plays to some people's strength around responsibility. What are the types of things that you could really count on me during this time of crisis and disruption? Omalola is saying, when I feel the project is a waste of time, no purpose, just activities. Yeah, nobody likes just to work for the sake of it. Robbie Young says, want me to jump on it before I've been able to process and plan it. Robbie, I really resonates, that one resonates with me. If you look at my deliberative, what I'd like to do is I like to think about things before I do it. And sometimes people then look at you as if you're a bit silly, that you don't understand the question. It's not that. I think we perfectly understand the question, but we just want time to think through it because we want to make sure that we're on the right track. Valerie's saying, sorry, just jumping around a little bit, is put me under pressure with inadequate resources. Too true. Bev is saying, not talking about me, appreciated. Umbo saying, when you're micromanaging my work style. Yes, I tell you, we all dislike micromanagement, don't we? Darby's saying, short notice to give work that is readily available elsewhere. Yeah, exactly. Chris says, you can count on me to keep that which I commit to, you know. Bev, to keep people informed, to give hope, positivity, and to get new things going. Thanks, Bev. I really like those. Shalandra says, count on me to come up with brilliant and practical alternatives. Fantastic. Right, Mashlami is saying, you get the worst of me when you lie. I can relate to that. Lizelle saying, you can count on me to provide great options. Darby, to stay calm and collected to tackle issues. And Samela saying, you get the worst of me when you don't get the point of what needs to be done. Yes, we've all had those very frustrating conversations about that. And it often happens to me in the tech world where somebody says, just do X, Y, and Z. And you might as well say to me, you might as well lick the wall because it makes no sense. And you ask the question and they get exasperated by thinking that you're totally stupid. So can relate to that. Darby saying to stay calm and collected to tackle issues. Absolutely. And Erica says to keep the team motivated. Fantastic, guys. What I think you're starting to notice is that each individual brings a individual, unique characteristic around the types of things about when they operate best, what they can be counted on in terms of contribution, and when you get the worst out of them. And then the final one really is about what do I need from you? In other words, from others to be successful. And this is a great way to have that connected conversation we were talking about. Gerald was saying, you get the worst of me when you aren't sincere. Yeah, authenticity, not lying. I think with technology and working virtual, there's a tremendous pressure on leaders and managers to make sure that they communicate authentically and they don't project something that they're not. So I certainly understand that. Guys, any examples or things that you want to share in terms of what I need from you? What do you need from others to be successful? Any thoughts or ideas? Bev Shifley says, I need open and honest lines of communication. Now, there's that honesty question that comes across all the time, and I think it's very important. We once had a great team dynamics session, and the value of honesty came up. And usually what happens with organizations, they pick honesty as a default value because they think honesty is important. And then I always play the game, well, how honest are you? And the example I always use is most adults who have children, who are parents, have told their kids about, in some form or another, about Father Christmas, which technically is a lie. So the question is, if you want to be absolutely 100% honest, what tends to happen is that your children don't have Christmas and your friends may never talk to you again. And then we had a great PhD in statistics once tell us that what you actually need is to be 86.6% honest, and that would be fine. And I think the only reason why I tell you that story is because honesty, I think, is a difficult one. And what one person's honesty is another person's politics, is another person's lie. So it's an important one to keep in mind. Tomo is saying, when you attend the meeting and get the details of an issue, then forget about it. Okay. Erica is saying communication. Lizelle saying, I need autonomy in planning my day, especially at home. Kwakwamba is saying, count on to provide ideas. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point about providing ideas. If you want to provide ideas, then there must be space for people to hear them. Valerie is saying teamwork and shared reflection. Margriet is reflecting back to Tommy. I can see now that it can drive you crazy. Zamela says, I need from you to practice what you preach. Yeah, there's nothing like walking the talk at this moment. One of the pieces advice I can give you to as managers and leaders is to make sure that you don't go from this webcast, and even if you are very motivated from it and we've given you great value, is to on Monday morning arrive as a different type of person and project a false persona, because now you think that you need to give people hope by taking on a Donald Trump persona. That's just going to scare people, so don't do that. What it is about reflecting who you are and what you can bring to them in that space. Gerald's saying, openness and fairness in the carrying out and sharing of responsibilities, not sidelining me and also not giving credit where it is due. So that recognition mechanism, I think it's easy, out of sight, out of mind, so let's not forget our folk. Thomas saying, I need tools and properly functioning business systems to be able to deliver results. Tomo can relate. I think sometimes even with us and our internet connection, it can drive you insane. And Inelise is saying mutual respect. Yeah, fantastic. Bev is saying authenticity is probably the better word than honesty. Yeah, Bev, I get it. Not that I'm advocating anybody should lie, but at this time, I think it's easy to misunderstand each other. And so from a communication point of view, we need to try, I think, a lot harder to get it right. This is why I'm not a fan of email. Fantastic, guys. There's some really great responses, and thanks for sharing that with us. You can start to see when you look at, sorry, Margriet was saying, if this is how we feel, can you imagine how our team members are feeling? Great power question. If you start to think about these 4 blocks and thinking about this as a tool, literally, you can look at the 6 things that we suggested that you do as a team leader, then use this tool with your individual team members, and literally they will provide the answers to the 6 areas that you need to work on to be, I think, a great leader at this stage. So if you think about it, you get the best of me when? What are those circumstances? What are the expectations? How do you engage with me? All those 6 elements are based there. Lizelle says, I need a faster internet. Yes. Lizelle, from your lips to God's ears. I think we're all in that mode. You can literally see all the elements of you get the best of me in those 6 components. The worst of me, these are the types of things that you may inadvertently really be doing to switch me off. These could be my blind spots. These could be things that I don't, as a manager, don't go there. Don't micromanage when autonomy is required. You can counter me. These are fantastic, really, things about, so what is my contribution? And then that important question, what does the person need from you and other teammates? Because remember, they may have a partnership or a friendship in the business that they rely on to keep them motivated, to provide them with input and all that good stuff. So guys, what we've really showed you, and hopefully you take this away as a practical thing, is we've got the 6 elements around what we think you should be doing. And here's a tool that you can share with your individual staff members that they can engage with, and you can have a great conversation with them about in terms of setting up that relationship around trust and commitment and value and recognition. And they will give you the answers. You don't have to, and you don't then have to guess those types of things. Of course, if you're an organization that has taken on board strengths, all the clues around this tool sit with the person's top 5 or 434 strengths report anyway, and you can start to think a little bit about how your strengths could interact using this tool with their strengths. And that's really the process that we think is a powerful one. But even if you've never heard of strengths before, you can use this tool, and we've had some really great results coming out of it. They've all 4 very simple questions. You can't mess them up because you just, they are what they are, but they can lead to very powerful responses, and that's what you're trying to do from a response point of view. And Tom is saying, yes, authenticity is important for me too. So guys, I think that's a great intervention. Nobody's saying we shouldn't be honest, but I think to show up as the real you, and what we like about that is Gallup always celebrates uniqueness. You have enough power and strength in your own uniqueness to make a valuable contribution, and that is enough. And as managers, if we can recognize that, help people turn the volume up on best and count by supplying needs and reducing the worst, then I think we have a great recipe for working with virtual teams. So the 2 power questions that we want to leave you with in terms of this webcast is, what do you need in order to navigate the disruption? And what do you bring to navigate this disruption? So these are questions really about individual managers. For managers, it's time to reflect a little bit on your management style. One size does not fit all. What worked for you in the past is not going to work for you now in the new virtual world. So what do you need? What are the types of strengths that you have? What are the tools? Is there somebody in the team that could help you? What support do you need from your leaders? Second question is, what do you bring to navigate the disruption? Are you cool under pressure? Are you the type of person that can provide great alternatives? What can you be counted on to bring to the party? And this is where we think Gallup Strengths is a valuable tool, because it creates the filter and predicts how we respond to disruption. So literally, all 34 strengths would have its own needs, would have its own ways of thinking about contribution and own ways of thinking about what could be the worst in that space, balconies and basements. But importantly, it will tell you, it'll give you clues in terms of the people that you lead, how they're going to respond. Somebody with positivity, for example, is going to respond very different to somebody like myself who has achiever and deliberative. And the way to think a little bit about this is the story of the Titanic. If you can imagine, the Titanic leaves Southampton Harbor and steams away. The people with different strengths will have different responses. Titanic hits the iceberg, so the deliberative would say, I told you there wasn't enough life rafts on the ship. The person with positivity would reframe that and say, it's important now that I had those swimming lessons, they'll come in very useful. 2 distinctly different types of responses to disruption, but equally valid. So the person with deliberative would need to get out of the basement and think a little bit about alternatives and risk mitigation now that there are not enough life rafts, while the person with positivity may need a little bit of help connecting with the reality, with the fact that swimming is great, but we maybe need a longer term resolution around that. And you can literally chart those needs as you look at each person's strengths. And the nice thing about that is that is available if you want that as a download going forward. So the 2 power questions: what do you need in order to navigate the disruption? And what do you bring to navigate the disruption? Right, guys. Excellent. And that really brings us to what we hoped to share with you in this webcast. We've ended it up a little bit early to give you an opportunity to ask or answer any questions that you have, or to share any issues or concerns that you may have that we can hopefully give you some answers to or contribute to. So this is now your space. We'll be online for the next 10 minutes just to ask and answer any questions that you may have. The webcast will be available. It is being recorded, so we will send you the link afterwards. We'll also send you some Gallup collateral around other recommendations around working with virtual teams. And for those that want to have a strength-based conversation with us afterwards, please just drop us a note once you get the collateral, and we'll certainly respond to you during this time. Any questions, guys, that we can think about answering for you? Anybody on the line that want to throw out a challenge that might be unique to them that they may want us to apply our minds to? Right, people seem to be a bit slow. Guys, if you had a valuable session and you want to log off, you feel free to do so. Thank you very much for joining us. Margriet and myself will still be around. We think it's important to provide an opportunity for that. Please don't feel shy about asking questions. All questions are good questions. We still have 46 people on the line, so there's a tremendous amount of wisdom around the table. So feel free to make use of it. Right, so Bev is saying, I feel this is the same as the grieving process. How do we help lead through this process? Bev, I think that's a great question. I think it is a bit like grieving. So for those that are interested in this, there's a very famous model that goes step by step through the grieving process about how people in actual fact engage with loss. My sense of this is that I'm not sure we know what we've lost yet. So that's maybe a bit of a tricky component of it. But there are those various stages. And I think it really goes back to each person's strengths and what those strengths need. So achiever, for example, would need clarity. They would need something to work on. They would need a go forward position. And each one of the 34 strengths can really be mapped according to that. So Margriet was saying, yes, Bev, using the 5 stages of grief will certainly help folk, but I think it's the connecting of the strengths DNA would then give you an indication of how somebody would respond to all 5 steps. Rocher, thanks. Good to have you on board. Zamela says, thank you. Great presentations. Really need leaders to show during this time and difficult one. Bev Shipley, yep. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross process. I got the Kubler-Ross in my mind, but I've forgotten about the Elizabeth, but thank you for that. Lizelle saying, yes, I feel the stages myself. My personal solution is my individual strengths approach through the step. Lizelle, I think that's exactly right. But I think what also Gallup recommends is complementarity. So I think this is the time when you reach out to those complementary partners, your coach, your friends, your family, that you can have that conversation with and get that support. This is why we are advocating that people really get close to their coach at this stage, if they have one. And the reason for that is the sounding board, the ability to vent, but also the ability now to reflect a little bit and say, if things are changing, how they're changing, and what should I be doing in terms of addressing that. Some people that we are coaching with are starting to think a little bit about, this is a fantastic opportunity to learn new education skills, or to rethink my career, or really to reevaluate what is valuable or worthwhile to me. And there's been some great discussions around that, and some people have really wanting to, on the threshold of making very big decisions for themselves. I don't always think it needs to be an A or a Z question. I think sometimes it's just little incremental things about reflection. You have the time, if you have family with you have time with family, what are you going to do with that time, and so on. I think the future sometimes will take care of itself. Right. Erica saying, do you have any tips for us on remote coaching? Yeah, great question, Erica. For us, remote coaching is pretty much, a Zoom call away. In our experience, we haven't found it much, not as different to face-to-face coaching as we initially anticipated. I think Zoom and what we're doing here is much better than the telephone, though I wouldn't naysay the telephone. But the challenge with these types of connections, especially if you can't see somebody, is that your listening needs to be spot on. You've really got to intensely listen, because you can't see the person, you can't read the body language perhaps as easily as you do in normal coaching. But we find Zoom is almost as effective, because at least you can see the person. But that active listening then becomes more mission critical. Right. Okay, so I see that there's been a lot of good ones. I just want to check if there's missed any great questions. Okay, Denisha, thank you very much. Guys, much appreciated. Thank you for all the well wishes and so on. We really enjoy actually connecting with you guys and sharing some of the ideas that we have. Sometimes it's better to talk through than just to read some of the collateral that we have available. You're very welcome to reach out to us in our individual capacities. We'll always try and respond. Yeah, I just to reiterate, thanks for the patience. We had a couple of hiccups where the internet decided not to work with us, but I think that we've got through. Annalise, thank you for the space to connect with other coaches. Happy to do that. We do have coaching forums that we do offer. The last one, and you can go and have a look at the link, is when we hosted for our coaches the Gallup session with Jim and Dean from Gallup, and talked a little bit about our vision for Africa and the coaching fraternity. Bev says, I do it all the time. That's great. Lizelle says, in Afrikaans, quip dictate 8, by learning as much as teaching. Yeah, Lizelle, I think you're absolutely right. I think what I have discovered working from home, though, is the fact that sometimes you can get really sick and tired of your laptop and social media. I think sometimes switching that off is not a bad thing. So maybe an old-fashioned book or an old-fashioned course would be useful. Right, guys, thank you. Edward, thank you. Fantastic. Guys, we're 4 minutes away from our allotted end time at 3 o'clock. I'm sure that 17 new questions will occur to you. Please feel free to drop those questions to you. We'll try and answer them or send you the Gallup research or collateral that we have available on the topic. So at this time, from us, stay safe, stay connected. Hopefully, we're a trusted source that you can come and speak to us and raise questions if you need to. For those that are coaches, keep reaching out. For those that are about to write their Gallup Strength Coaching Examination, this is a really good time to do it. You have time to do the evaluation. Right, guys, Godspeed. Thank you very much. Enjoy. We'll catch up. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much. Goodbye.